Good evening. Welcome to the N.E.A.R show, where we discuss and actively explore paranormal phenomena. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the co-founder of N.E.A.R, New England Anomalies Research. Sandra is not with us tonight, but hello, Sandra, and God bless you. I'll be seeing you soon. And this evening, I have a very familiar guest who's no stranger to N.E.A.R, Mr. Cody Ray DesBiens.
Thanks for having me on, Keith.
Nice to have you back with us.
I know, right? It's been fun.
And tonight, we are actually going to actively explore some paranormal phenomena in the form of haunted items. Now, as many of you know, Cody Ray and his partner, the paranormal couple, the other half of the paranormal couple, they have their own museum of haunted or allegedly haunted artifacts, paranormal related. And we're going to get right in and start discussing some of these because they are very intriguing.
They are. Some really interesting stories.
Great. Well, what would you like to begin with, Cody?
Well, this is probably the most recent item into the museum. So all the items we have in the museum are sent in by clients. And most of them we have dealt with either virtually, over the phone, or we go in person. Mm-hmm. This woman lived in Alabama. She still lives there now. Yep. And the story behind this object is a chilling one, but a very heartwarming one at the same time. Mm-hmm. So it was a single mother, 2 children, who lives in Alabama. And one day, it was a Wednesday, she was getting some last-minute chores done at home before her kids got home off the school bus. And so she's running around trying to make them a snack so it's ready for when they get home. And she's trying to worry about the dog and feed the dog. And in walks her mother, mm-hmm. Which wasn't unusual. She only lived about 30 minutes away, mm-hmm. The kid's grandmother. But the weird thing was that it was a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And the strange thing about that was the mother would go to church twice a week. She would go every Sunday for the regular church service and every Wednesday to do her rosary beads. Uh-huh. So when her mother walked in, the daughter said, how come you're here? How come you're not at church? You should be at church right now. And she held up her rosary beads and she said, I've been going for decades, twice a week, every week. I'm sure God is not going to get mad if I miss one day. Mm-hmm. She says, I have a headache. So they both laughed, and she says, well, Mom, I'm trying to get the kids' snack ready, so if you want to help me, I have to take care of the dog. So the mother says, you know what, let me handle the dog. I'll feed the dog and let him out, and you handle the kids' snack. So she says, okay. A few minutes go by, and she hears the bus coming up the street. So the daughter runs outside and says, Mom, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get the kids off the bus. So she walks out to the end of the driveway. The kids get off the bus. She says, oh, Grandma's here today, and they get all excited. They start walking back in, and the daughter's cell phone rings, and it's her sister. And she says, I've been trying to reach you for the past hour or so, but the phone line has been busy. How come you haven't been answering? We found Mom had passed away in her sleep last night. So she drops the phone because she knows she just had a conversation with her. She's in the house. So she runs back into the house and finds that the dog has been let outside. The dog bowl's full with food, and her rosary beads are sitting on the counter.
Oh my goodness. So
she sent the rosary beads that were found on the counter to the museum so we could tell that story that, everybody has their own way of saying goodbye. Now, we know that in the paranormal community as a crisis apparition, sure. Which happens very frequently. It's a phenomena that is reported quite often. But the daughter felt that this was, her mother's way of saying goodbye in a different way, and she wanted to donate her mother's rosary beads to tell that story. So it's a chilling one, but a heartwarming one, knowing that she kind of gifted these,
Exactly, and that's a story that does need to be told and shared.
It is.
Thank you for sharing that with
absolutely.
us.
This is a beautiful, beautiful set.
Wow. I'm
well
sure
taken
you treasure
care of.
That.
Yes, this is a great piece.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So kind of along the same lines, this is a religious wood carving. Uh-huh. Now this gentleman came from a terminally ill gentleman who donated this before he passed away.
Really? Beautiful.
And hand carved. So this gentleman was very religious. He would attend church service a few times a week. Mm-hmm. And when he became terminally ill, he could no longer attend service. Mm-hmm. So his wife tried to make it, as comfortable as possible, and she bought him a prayer kneeler. that he could put in his home and
Yes.
kneel and pray and kind of make church service at his house. And because he couldn't get out and do things, he started taking up the hobby of wood carving. And the things that he started to carve was religious artifacts to kind of make him feel like he was still at church.
Right.
And this is one of the first ones he carved, and he placed it on top of his kneeler that his wife got him. And he would kneel down and pray to this figure every evening before bed and every morning when he woke up when the sun rose. And he claimed that one evening, while he was praying to this figure, an overwhelming feeling of warmth fell over him and peacefulness. And he claimed that the figure started talking to him and moving, saying that everything was going to be okay. He was going to have a peaceful transition. And the gentleman felt very much at peace after that and had a peaceful transition. But before he passed away, he donated it to the museum to, again, tell that story, to hopefully give hope to somebody. And that's not the first time we've heard this story. The first object that we ever got into the museum was a painting that belonged to my grandfather. And it was a very similar story. He claimed that the painting started talking to him in his final days and telling him that everything was going to be okay. It was a big painting of Christ. And so this seems to be a phenomena that we find is occurring more and more with people getting assurance of their faith that they're going to have a peaceful transition.
Wow.
So this is a nice piece.
Yeah, very, very nice. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And then this piece here, this is from New Orleans, a trip down to New Orleans. And the whole reason why I took that trip is because Satori and I, we like to learn about different cultures and the way people interact with the paranormal. And of course, the art of voodoo is a big prominent thing that's in the field. And the epicenter for that in the United States is in New Orleans. So I went down to New Orleans to hopefully interview a few people that practice this art today. And to kind of get the real story, because there are a lot of misconceptions out there on the internet. So I met up with this one gentleman who owns a store down there, and I went in with the sole purpose of interviewing him and asking him about voodoo. And he walks out with this big box, and inside of the box was 6 masks, authentic masks that he brought over that belonged to his ancestors in Africa. He brought them over about 25 years ago and settled in the New Orleans area. And he takes out the masks, and this one is separated from the other 5. It was wrapped up in some sort of fabric. And of course, my first question was, why is this one separated from the other 5? And he says, well, when I hold it, I get the visions of tribal dancing in my head. And it's supposed to be comforting because that's what my ancestors did, but it kind of freaks me out. And the patrons that come into my store, they see these shadow figures running around and dancing, and it scares them, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose business. The other big thing is this overwhelming campfire smoke smell that nobody can explain. The first time it happened, I thought the store was on fire. There was nothing there, and it seemed that the only commonality is that when the mask was out, that's when the smell would come. So he says, all of this stuff put together really is freaking me out, and I don't want it anymore, so I want you to take it home to the museum. So I was like, okay. So every object that comes into our museum, we put it through what we call a quarantine period, where we stick it in a room by itself, and we just kind of watch it for about 2 weeks.
Kind of your own Ellis Island.
Exactly, yeah. Put some cameras and some equipment just to see if it's living up to the claims that the client gave it, almost as a baseline to start the case file up. And usually 9 times out of 10, out of the hundreds of objects we have, nothing happens during this period. And we find that there is an acclimation period. It's very rare that something happens. This object, right away, was giving off strange electromagnetic readings that we couldn't explain, that an inanimate piece of wood should not be giving off. It was giving off verbal voices that we could hear, audible voices that we could hear with our own ears that sounded like they were mimicking us. They didn't understand our language, but they would mimic words that we would say often. So Tori, every time she goes into the museum, she always says good morning or good night, whatever time we're in there, to the objects, just as a sign of respect. And one time we audibly heard, after she said good night one night, good night back in a deep, raspy voice, accented, almost like he doesn't understand what's being said, but is saying it back because he hears it all the time. The campfire smoke smell is something that we've also witnessed multiple times. We have a traveling exhibit, and the past two exhibits, people have reported an overwhelming scent of this campfire smoke
Really?
smell that we can't explain.
People that don't know the story behind it.
Yes, exactly. We also have in our traveling exhibit stations where if you experience something, you write it down on a piece of paper and put it in a box. And the cool thing about this is that nobody knows each other, and we can kind of build a big case study over time to see, maybe 90% of the people that are around this mask are smelling this campfire smoke or get a feeling of anxiousness. And we can kind of build a big case study that way. So we always try to get everybody's opinions when they're around a certain object. Yes. So this is one that's been kind of active, and we have a top 5 section, and this one is in the top 5.
Wow.
No negative feelings or anything like that, but sometimes people feel a little anxious. I don't think anything bad is around it. There's a lot of spirituality put into these masks, When they're being carved, the carver would carve the mask, and they would envision a different god or deity while they were carving it. And they would hope that the wearer of the mask during their ceremony would then be possessed by that god. That god would overpower them, and then they would do their ceremony. This one's a little different.
Kind of like a Loa.
Exactly. This one's a bit different because the eye holes are extremely thin. It would be very hard to see through this mask.
Yes.
So this one would be a death mask. So they would use this when somebody would pass away in their tribe. They would place the mask over them and then perform the ceremony, and the body would be, possessed or taken over by the different god or deity that this mask represents, and they would perform a ceremony. So that's what makes this one different than your usual tribal mask.
How old would you estimate that is?
Well, we had a piece of the wood tested to see if its authenticity was correct, and it was. These masks were used turn of the century into the 20th century, 19th century to 20th century, and they date back even before that. But the thing you have to watch out now for is there are reproductions that are authentic, which they started making them for tourist sales, of course, to make money.
Right.
And they looked very authentic. They are made by the same people, but they're not used in ceremony.
Right. They don't really have a past.
So the way we can line up this one is with that gentleman's lineage. We were able to line up that his family really was, from that area. It's really an interesting piece, and this, we've collected, I want to say there's about 24 masks now in the museum that are from all different parts of the world, and they hold so much spiritual energy,
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So the last one I brought here, this is another interesting story that for us it was hard to believe when it was told to us. So this is a Christmas tree topper angel, and a lot of the objects that we get, when we're talking to the family, we ask, where did you get the item?
Right.
And they are either at a secondhand store or a thrift store, and they describe this magnetic pull to purchase something that either they normally wouldn't purchase, or they would, and something inside of them is telling them that they need to have it. So this woman was one day walking through a thrift store, and it was Christmas time of 2019, and she was drawn in to purchase this item. And so she purchases it, pays the few dollars, and brings it home and asks her husband to place it on top of the Christmas tree. And they had 2 small children. It was a tradition to get a live Christmas tree every year.
Yeah.
So he did that. He thought it looked nice. And they go to sleep that night, and they're awakened by this strong smell of smoke. So they're frightened, and they run down the stairs and find that their Christmas tree is no longer a Christmas tree. It's just a stick with the angel sitting on top of it.
The angel was still intact.
Perfectly fine, which is very odd because she's made out of cardboard as a base, and she has synthetic hair which should have melted. So right away they thought, the angel is a blessing. It saved the house from burning down. So okay, it's not Christmas time yet. We have to go get another Christmas tree. Now, one thing that was odd, the fire alarms did not go off that night, which was strange. So they called their security company because their fire alarms were wired into the security system, and they sent a technician out to see if everything was okay. And the security guy said, yeah, everything is fine. I assure you that if there was ever another problem, they should go off and we should be alerted. So they felt good about that, but something inside of them was still, very frightened of what happened. So they went and got some fire extinguishers just in case something was to happen again.
Right.
So they went out and got another Christmas tree, and they placed the angel on top of the tree because, again, they believed that it saved their lives. They go to sleep that night, and they're awoken by the smell of smoke again. So they run down the stairs, no fire alarms going off, and actually see the Christmas tree on fire. Thankfully, they had bought those fire extinguishers and were able to put the fire out. Again, the angel was untouched. Not one burn on her, just some soot that they were able to wipe off. So they were done with Christmas of 2019 at that point. They were very scarred. And the children were having the same dreams, which was odd. They slept in 2 separate bedrooms, and they were dreaming of an older woman that would kind of stand in the corner of their room. Was it a dream, or were they really seeing this? But to have 2 children having the same dreams the same night in 2 separate bedrooms is extremely odd. So that was another thing that was happening, and this house never had paranormal activity. So Christmas of 2020 rolls around, and 2020 was not a good year for anybody, but especially for this family. They bought a live Christmas tree once again, and they placed the angel on top of the tree. Now, at this point, the husband did not want anything to do with the angel at this point because he felt very odd about it. But the mother, again, she felt that magnetic pull, an attachment to this object, that a sense of love. And, she needed to put this on top of the Christmas tree, a need to put it on the tree. So she made her husband put it on the tree, and finally he gave in, and he put it on the Christmas tree, and they go to sleep that night. And again, they wake up to the smell of smoke. No fire alarms going off. They run down the stairs and actually visually see the whole side of the house catching on fire this time. They claim that they were lucky to get the children out okay and themselves. Everybody was okay, but the house was now inhabitable. They could not live in there, uninhabitable. And they had to move. So long story short, they end up getting a new home, and one day the mother goes back to the old house and digs out the angel from the fire, perfectly fine, puts it inside of a grocery bag and brings it home. The husband finds out that she had brought it home and knows that there's a problem. Something is telling her to keep bringing this angel back into their lives. And finally, he was able to convince her that maybe the angel isn't a blessing, and maybe something happened to this angel before it was put inside of the thrift store. We found that the angel was made in the 70s, so there's definitely a lot of time for something to happen. We're not really sure what happened, but it was at that point that they gave us a call, and we were able to assist them. Now, after the whole ordeal was over with and the angel was removed, we always do a follow-up with the clients. And it's at this point that if there is some sort of attachment to an item, it's when they realize that they had it, because it's no longer in their life anymore. And when we talk to this woman, she says, I have no idea why I purchased this angel. This isn't my style. I normally wouldn't purchase something like this. I'm not a vintage type of person. But I really felt that something inside of me was drawing me in to purchase this, and that's why she got it. And she believes to this day that something, some higher power or some other power was kind of leading her in that direction.
Wow.
So definitely an out there story, but when you're sitting face to face across a table from somebody and they're telling their story and you can see the tears welling up in their eyes, we definitely believe something happened with this family that scared them.
They are sincere about it,
and this was the cause of it.
Wow.
So that is that.
That's wonderful. Do you purposely have it encased like that because of possible attachment?
So the odd thing about this item is this past Christmas of 2021 was the first Christmas we had her in our possession. And leading up to Christmas time, we noticed that this soot substance was building up on her more and more every day, which was strange. And we were nervous that there was going to be a fire inside the museum. So we had this fully glass case built. So if there was a fire, it would suppress oxygen and it wouldn't spread. It would be contained within the glass case. So that's the main reason why she's in a case. This is her traveling case. And the items that are in cases, it's either because they're extremely old and we don't want them to break, or we believe that it's containing whatever energy is in there. There's different bindings and different rituals that we do to make sure it is contained if the spirit or entity is one that could affect people in a negative way.
Oh, okay. Very good. Excellent. Wow. Now, you have a traveling van that you actually bring these items around.
We do.
Around the country when you go to different conventions and such.
We do.
And very, very nice van, the way it's set up, and the advertisement on the side and everything tells exactly what it's about.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very, very good. Very professional.
Yes, yeah. What we're currently doing with the museum, and this won't last forever, is we travel to different haunted locations and conventions and set up the items within the building and allow people to read the stories and learn about them. And because, like I said, we have a lot of items that have been donated by families just to keep their memory alive, and we find that that's a good way to do it. And eventually, there'll be a permanent location where it'll be set and people can come visit it that way.
Wonderful, wonderful. Now, I myself just brought a few items, and this is your friend, your personal friend, Elvis.
It is,
I say that because Cody does an Elvis impersonation.
That's right.
But this was made, ceramics, actually by Sandra's mother, who's now in heaven, but she made this and very, very nicely painted it herself and everything. It's not necessarily haunted. The only thing is that the eyes tend to follow people when you look at it,
Yeah, I could see that, yeah.
So some people get a little disturbed when Elvis is looking, they wake up and Elvis is looking right at them, they tend to turn it around. But I just thought I'd show that. And this is an item from, this is actually a doll. It supposedly has an attachment. And this doll's name, this is from our mutual friend, Gwynnie.
Okay.
In one socket.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Let me see if I haven't taken her out in a long time, but this is N.E.A.R.
Oh, wow.
And I think she's a beautiful little girl. I think she's very pretty.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, has rosaries around her neck.
Yeah, she does. She's been blessed. She has all sorts of protection.
Now, was there any reports that came with the doll, or?
Gwynnie reported that this doll had been staring and the eyes move, and it was in different locations, moved, not in different parts of the room, but it was different, posed different from where it was left.
Wow.
So I think it's a lovely little doll.
Wow.
And you may be in possession of it someday.
Oh, really?
If you would like, yes. Yeah, but,
wow, it seems like dolls and...
dolls, because they're very lifelike.
Absolutely. Dolls are very lifelike, and of course the Hollywood influence with the movies and things like that.
Oh, yes.
With haunted dolls.
And it's got a lot of publicity lately.
Absolutely.
Yep. Now, do you ever get artifacts that people donate to you that it's just too bad mojo, you get a bad feeling and you have to dispose of it, or you actually don't want because it's just too much of an attachment or too much of a bad story? Do you ever deal with that?
There's been a few items that we've called some assistance on. Of course, we're good friends with Mr. Zaffis, who has a museum up in Connecticut.
Right.
And just to get some different opinions on how to handle things.
Yeah.
And of course, we found that all collectors, they do things differently, and they base a lot of their methods on what they believe in. Mm-hmm. Some people believe that they shouldn't touch objects with their skin.
Right.
Which is why you're wearing gloves right now. Mm-hmm. And other people believe that it's safe to touch items with their skin.
Yeah.
So we have some items that have come from some pretty dark locations, involved in some pretty dark events, that the energy is definitely off. That even myself sometimes I feel that we shouldn't touch.
Right.
But our belief is that once you start showing fear towards your items, sometimes they can start taking you over.
Yeah, right,
and this is definitely not something for everybody.
It can lead to obsession.
Absolutely. So we definitely make sure that we stand strong in our faith and what we believe in, and make sure that no matter what gets sent to us, that we are the stronger power when it comes to this, and we're trying to show them signs of respect, and we're trying to tell their story no matter how unfortunate it may be.
Right.
So we haven't gotten rid of anything that has come to us. We have called for some assistance, but everything that has been sent to us, we still have. And we always offer that if anybody sends anything to us, they can always have it back.
Yeah.
because a lot of these things are personal items, you know. But
Yes.
to this day, out of the hundreds of items we have, not one person is called to get their item back.
Well, you're doing good keeping of them.
Oh, thank you.
They know they're in safe hands.
Thank you.
Exactly. Now, in our last few minutes, I'd like to just shift topics for a moment, if I may, talk about a topic that is of quite a lot of importance, actually, and that is something you have experienced, and that is marrow donation.
That's
and
right.
how it can save lives. I was registered for marrow donation for many years, you know, till I aged out of it. But
Yeah.
would you mind sharing a little about that, please?
Absolutely. Well, I certainly would not be speaking to you right now if it wasn't for the bone marrow registry. And, you know, I was diagnosed with cancer in 2011, and the only cure, I had leukemia, the only cure was a bone marrow transplant. And I remember when they only search for a match once you've exhausted all possibilities of treatment, and I had done that. All chemotherapy and stuff stopped working, and the last resort was the bone marrow registry. So that day, somebody had signed up, a young gentleman. There was no match for me. That day, somebody had signed up, and he happened to be over 90% match. So without him signing up, that one person out of the thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are signed up for this registry, I wouldn't have had a match. So that one person changed the life of somebody else. So it's very simple to sign up. You just sign up on the internet through the bone marrow registry. And a lot of people believe that if they're signed up to be an organ donor, they're already in the registry, and it's something totally different.
Right.
So you sign up if you're over 18, and there's a couple different, you have to meet a couple qualifications, but it's very simple.
Right.
And most people don't end up getting called.
Right,
But
true.
if-
I was never called, but
Yep.
I was registered for years.
but if you do get called, it's a very non-invasive procedure. It's kind of like a big IV, and they remove a little bag of bone marrow. It's very simple.
And you could be saving someone's life.
Yes,
by doing
absolutely,
this,
absolutely.
Just by signing up.
Yes, so I would appreciate if anybody was to at least just look into it and to read a little bit about it.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I did want to touch on that topic.
Thank you so much.
So I know you've got a lot of appearances ahead of you, and you and Satori, and really this is fabulous that you're getting the name out there, and kind of dispelling some of the mystique about these haunted items. You know?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
There is a big misconception that people believe that every object is possessed by a demon or something negative.
Yeah.
And as you can see, you know, there are definitely items that have brought peace and
Yeah,
warmth to
right.
people. We believe that a majority of the items we have in the museum is just something that somebody loved a lot in life, and they just kind of check in on it once in a while. They're not stuck inside of it. They have moved on to another realm, we believe,
Yep.
and they just once in a while see how their item is doing, maybe move it. That's when you see movement, and then they go back to their other realm.
So here's someone to contact if you have something that you would really like to part with because you feel it might be something a little paranormal about it. Is the person to contact.
Thank
One
you.
of the people to contact.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, keep up the good work and good luck, and I'm sure we'll have you on again very soon.
Wonderful. Thanks,
You're always
Keith.
getting new items, right?
That's right.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all for watching, and thank you, Cody, and give our love to Satori as well.
Absolutely.
And I'll be seeing you again before you know it.
Awesome. Sounds
All right.
great.
God bless.
Thank you.
Take care. Good night, everyone.